Hello, I'm Paul, and this is Ask Paul. So let's see what somebody's going to ask. Oh, let's see here. Okay. Peter in Canterbury, England. Oh, that's Canterbury? Tales of Canterbury? Wow, that's pretty cool. Anyway, Peter wants to know, I'm interested in your views regarding absolute polarity. I won't make the mistake of using phase. Well, thank you. A lot of people call it phase, and it kind of is, but Peter's correct. Polarity is a better way to put it. Is it hearable? Is it important? Physical hardware switch? In these days of multi-channel signal pass before final stereo mastering, is it or should it be an issue? Well, my good friend George, the polarity pundit, would tell you that it is as critical an issue as it comes. And I do not agree with George. I love George. He's a good guy. I think he's a little obsessed with it. And that's okay, because we need obsessive people. And I think people like George really help us in our understanding of things that are important, and it's very important to him. And he will tell you that he can instantly hear whether it's in polarity or out of polarity, in phase, out of phase. And I've heard him do it, and he can. And he's almost always right. So to your first question, Peter, is it hearable? Absolutely. I can sit in music room 1 and switch between polarities, and I can always hear the difference. And some polarities on some tracks, sometimes within an album, you're switching back and forth to see it. But here's the interesting thing. If I have a favorite track that I sit and I listen to and I switch the polarity back and forth, and I'll explain all that in a second. As I'm doing the A-B on a system that is revealing and that I know very well, I can choose which one sounds better. Now let's imagine that I leave it in one position or another. If I go away and come back in an hour or a day, now I have to kind of start over. So there's this problem that I don't really understand, and I don't claim to understand. I know some people are probably more sensitive than I to it, but left alone for a while, the track sounds just fine to me. And then I can do the same switch, and I'll usually come up with the same opinion, but those differences which immediately seem big don't seem so big when I go away for a while. So maybe it's just my musical memory isn't great, but that observation doesn't hold true for any number of things where I can, even days later, go back in and tell instantly, that's wrong. It doesn't happen with polarity. It seems the differences seem to fade for me over time. That said, let's talk about what it is that we think is going on. So if we're talking polarity, what we mean is at the beginning of a transient, at the beginning, if you're going from dead silent to sound, the very first thing that happens is a speaker, driver, a cone, will either move forward or move backward, right? That's what happens. And it starts going like this. But how does it start? Does it start out or does it start in? And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about polarity. So polarity is where you take the plus and the minus on a loudspeaker and you flop them around so that a signal that formerly pushed the driver out now pushes it back in. And it is thought, or it is explained to me, that the difference is when I strike a cymbal, that initial strike of the brush or the mallet or whatever I'm whacking the cymbal with naturally went this way as opposed to this way. And that difference is what we are hearing. Now, that said, it all sounds very logical until I start thinking that, well, wait a minute. These are moving at 10,000 times a second or 1,000 times a second. And my ear is that discerning that we're not talking about, because phase, we know that varying phase angles throughout music, our ear is very sensitive to that. It's very sensitive to temporal changes as well. But is it sensitive when the entire 180 degrees is flipped over and it starts out as opposed to starts in? I don't know, and I don't have enough of an engineering background and knowledge to speak with any kind of authority on this. I can only tell you what I hear. And I can tell you that every time I do a polarity change, I can hear the difference. And I sometimes mark them down on tracks. And we have an upcoming server. And one of the things I want to do in the server is be able to flip the polarity of tracks and then remember it, right? So every time you play it, it will be the proper polarity and you don't have to think about it. That said, I don't know how big of a deal it is. It depends. If we ask George, the polarity pundit, he will tell you it is absolutely critical. If you ask others, they'd say, yeah, I can hear the difference. And I don't really pay that much attention to it. I'm in the latter camp. Sometimes I do. Mostly I'm too lazy to even worry about it. I don't know if that's much of an answer, but it's the best I got. Anyway, thanks so much, Peter. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.